Vasudevaya.
Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Sadhudaya Srimad Bhagavatam Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasadane Namaste Saraswati Prasadane Shatadane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Saraswati Gauravani Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. In Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 20 verse 15 Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
Upannamidam Subhru
Upapannam idam subhru
Jataya Kusikanvaye
Jataya Kusikanvaye
Swayami Pranute Rakhyam
Swayami Pranute Rakhyam
Kanyaka Sadrasambaram
Kanyaka Sadrasambaram.
Dushmanta Uvacha
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha Upapannam idam subhru Jataya Kusikanvaye Swayami Pranute Rakhyam Kanyaka Sadrasambaram. Shri Dushmanta Uvacha Shri Dushmanta Uvacha Upapannam idam subhru Upapannam idam subhru Jataya Kusikanvaye Jataya Kusikanvaye Swayam hi Pranute Rakhyam Kanyaka Sadrasambaram.
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
Upapannamidam subhru
Upapannamidam subhru
Jataya Kusikanvaye
Jataya Kusikanvaye
Swayam hi Pranute Rajñam
Swayam hi Pranute Rajñam
Kanyaka Sadrasambaram.
Kanyaka Sadrasambaram. Shri Dushmanta Uvacha Upapannam idam subhru Jataya Kusikanvaye Swayam hi Pranute Rajñam Kanyaka Sadrasambaram.
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
Shri Dushmanta Uvacha
King Dushmanta replied
King Dushmanta replied
Upannam just befitting your position
just befitting your position
Idam this Subhru
Subhru
O Sakuntala
O Sakuntala
Jataya because of your birth
because of your birth
Kushikanvaye
Kushikanvaye
in the family of Vishwamitra
in the family of Vishwamitra
Swayam personally in the Pranute select Rajñam of a royal family Kanyaka daughters Sadrasan on an equal level of our own husbands. Translation. King Dushmanta replied, also Kuntala with beautiful eyebrows, you have taken your birth in the family of the great saint Vishwamitra, and your reception is quite worthy of your own family. Aside from this, the daughters of the king generally select their own husbands. Purport in the reception, Maharaja Kuntala clearly said, Your Majesty may stay here and you may accept whatever reception I can offer. Thus she indicated she wanted Maharaja Dushmanta as her husband. As far as Maharaja Dushmanta was concerned, he desired Sakuntala as his wife from the very beginning. As soon as he saw her, so the agreement to unite as husband and wife was natural. To induce Sakuntala to accept the marriage, Maharaja Dushmanta reminded her that as the daughter of a king, she could select her husband in an open assembly. In the history of Aryan civilization, there have been many instances in which famous princesses are selected husbands in open competitions. For example, it was in such a competition that Sita Devi accepted Lord Ramachandra as her husband, and that Draupadi accepted Arjuna, and there are many other instances. So marriage by agreement or by selecting one's own husband in an open competition is allowed. There are 8 kinds of marriage, of which marriage by agreement is called Gandharva marriage. Certainly the parents select a husband or a wife for their daughter or son, but the Gandharva marriage takes place by personal selection. Still, although marriage by personal selection or by agreement took place in the past, we find no such thing as divorce by disagreement. Of course, divorce by disagreement took place among lower class men, but marriage by agreement was found even in the very highest classes, especially in the royal Kshatriya families. Maharaj's mother's acceptance of Sakuntala as his wife was sanctioned by Vedic culture. How the marriage took place is described in the next verse. When Sakuntala responded to Maharaj Dashmanta's proposal with silence, the agreement was complete. And the king, who knew the laws of marriage, immediately married her by chanting the Vedic Pranam. In accordance with the marriage ceremony is performed among the Gandharvas. Purport: the Omkar Pranavas in personality of God represented by letters. Bhagavad Gita says that the letters, combined together as Om, represent the Supreme Lord. The religious principles are meant to invoke the blessings and mercy of the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, who says in Bhagavad Gita that he is personally present in sexual desires that are not contrary to religious principles. The word Vidina means according to religious principles. The association of men and women according to religious principles is allowed in Vedic culture. In our Krishna conscious movement, we allow marriage on the basis of religious principles, but the sexual combination of men and women as friends is irreligious and is not allowed. English Mata, whenever you start singing without resolve, places semen at night in a woman's queen Sakuntala in the morning, return to his palace. Thereafter, in due course of time, Sakuntala gave birth to a son. In the forest, Kandamuni performed all the ritualistic ceremony concerning the newborn child. Later, the boy became so powerful he would capture a lion and play with it. Sakuntala, the best of beautiful women, along with her son, whose strength was insurmountable and who was a partial expansion of the Supreme Godhead, approached her husband, Krishna. When the king refused to accept his wife and his son, who were both irreproachable, an unembodied voice spoke from the sky as an omen and was heard by everyone present. Purport: Maharaj Jasmanta knew that Sakuntala and the boy were his own wife and son, but because they came from outside and were unknown to the citizens, he at first declined to accept them. Sakuntala, however, was so chaste that an omen from the sky declared the truth so that others could hear. When everyone heard from the omen that Sakuntala and her child were truly the king's wife and son, the king gladly accepted them. The voice said, "O Maharaj Krishna, a son actually belongs to his father, whereas the mother is only a container like the skin of the bellows. According to Vedic injunction, a father is born as the son. Therefore, maintain your own son and do not insult Sakuntala." Purport: according to Vedic injunctions, Atma vai Putra Nama, the father becomes the son. The mother is simply like a storekeeper because the seed of the child is placed in her womb, but as the father is responsible for maintaining the son. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he is the seed-giving father of all living entities, and therefore he is responsible for maintaining them. This is also confirmed in the Vedas. Eko bahunam nodati kama. God is one who maintains all living entities with their necessities for life. The living entities in different forms are sons of the Lord, and therefore the Father of the Supreme Lord supplies their food according to their different bodies. The small animals supply the grain of sugar, and the elephant is supplied tons of food, but everyone is able to eat. Therefore, there is no question of overpopulation. Because the Father Krishna is fully opulent, there is no scarcity of food, and because there is no scarcity, the propaganda of overpopulation is only a myth. Actually, one suffers from want of food when material nature, under the order of the Father, refuses to supply him food. It is the living entity's position that determines whether food will be supplied or not. When a diseased person is forbidden to eat, this does not mean there's a scarcity of food. Rather, the diseased person requires the treatment of not being supplied with food. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, "Vijam mamsa lavudana," and the seed of all living entities. A particular type of seed is sown within the earth, and then a particular type of tree or plant comes up. The mother resembles the earth, and when a particular type of seed is sown by the father, a particular type of body takes birth. So here we have the beginning of the story of how Sakuntala and English Mata got married, and then he left, and then later he denied the marriage. So although it seems to have been following the Gandharva system, it wasn't really completely following because he didn't even uphold his vow of supporting her. And then he actually denied her until the voice from the sky said, actually, she is the wife, etc. So therefore he wasn't completely honorable, you can say, in his conduct at this point. So as Prabhupada mentions, there are many systems of marriage, one of which is the Vinarva marriage, which is merely consent. And that was often followed by royal families and kings, etc., as we see here. But none of these systems are perfect. As we see here, later on, he denied the marriage completely. So they may be attracted to each other, but later he didn't seem to be attracted to her because he said, "Oh, he's not my wife, she's not my wife." Even though the son was there, and he knew who she was anyway, he lied. So, not a perfect system. The other system is arranged marriage. Also maybe not a perfect system, because maybe the people don't like each other and they get married. So, we have all sorts of different systems for marriage, and we have here so many systems allowed by custom in the Vedic system. But we see that none of them are actually perfect. There's always some fault as far as the material world is concerned. Nevertheless, this is because the variety of living entities are there, and we cannot always completely match people perfectly. And then we have not only people matching up, then we've got their systems, families, etc. to take care of, and which family gets along with which family, etc. So we have all sorts of compatibility issues, not just character issues. We have social issues as well, and family issues. So it's a very complicated thing. So the Vedic system more or less tries to accommodate different propensities by allowing these different types of marriage, some of which are considered better and some of which are worse. Okay? So the best is considered to be that where there is an arrangement and made as a secure type of system, where there's common agreement among the families, etc. In any case, as I said, there's always there can be some faults in these various types of systems, because this is the material world. Though King Dushyanta was actually, an exalted person, being born in a proper family, except a Kshatriya family descending from Manu. Even he was not able to follow perfectly his own vows, etc. So, what to speak of the common people? So when it comes to Kali Yuga, again, we have even more problems, because the people are less qualified and not of steady mind, etc. And even the system, even any of these systems, they're not familiar with how they work. And therefore people just on their own whimsically arrange marriages, etc., or have no marriage at all. So problems are there again. In any case, you find that a system of marriage is prevalent in most cultures of the world. And the whole reason for that is that there should be a family, and the family has to be taken care of. So therefore, the system of marriage is there to make a permanent bond, so that the father becomes responsible for the children. So as we see here, Prabhupada emphasizes this point about how the father has to take care of the child, just as the Supreme Lord takes care of all living entities. So therefore, the responsibility is impressed upon the father, because we have the bond of marriage, which is supposed to be permanent. So marriage means a bond which is permanent, and therefore the father is responsible for maintaining the wife and the children. So we have this system not only in the Vedic culture, we see it around the world. It is a common system because it works. So somehow the mother and the children have to be supported. So therefore we have the father. And to make sure that the father does his job properly, there is a marriage ceremony, so that the bond is permanent and it's impressed upon them as responsibility. So that is the basic purpose of the marriage, to support the family. As we see in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna describes how by killing the husbands and the wives will be left without any husbands and unprotected, then will be unstable population, and the wives won't be protected, the children will not be protected. So there's a very great concern for the family unit in the Vedic civilization. So this is not just a practical consideration in terms of raising children and protecting the mother. It is also a psychological consideration that the children grow properly when they have a stable family. So if the mother and father are always there, and there is some stability in the finances and support for the children, then the children grow up normally, and they can function properly in society. And when this is disturbed, then the children grow up and they become unproductive in society. They won't work, or if they work, they're very unsteady at work, or they get confused about their jobs or whatever, so they have all sorts of problems. So psychologically, it is also a practical measure for producing offspring who will be productive in society. The other point, of course, is that in the Vedic society, the father raises the children, and then the sons grow up, and they are trained by the father. So training is another important factor, that the discipline of the family and the training of the education, etc., of the sons is the responsibility of the father. So they get proper education. Now, in the Vedic system, education was mainly concerned with the occupation, so that they have an occupation when they grow up. And of course, the other aspect of education is dharma. They have to know dharma to some extent. So the father is responsible for all of that as well. Therefore, the system of the family unit is very, very important for these reasons. And of course, because of the occupation of the child is produced by the father, because he trains up the child, this also ensures the economy of the society. So, on the other hand, if we have broken families, then the children are not trained up properly, the sons especially. They're not mentally stable when they grow up, not productive at all. So then the finances of the society also, occupations and etc. of the society are all in the confusion as well. So in this way we get a lot of problems when we have unstable societies. This can also lead to what is criticized in the Bhagavad Gita, that is the mixture of the varnas. They start mixing up because the mothers are desperate to support their children, therefore they marry anybody again. After they're broke, they break one marriage, they get another marriage, and they marry anybody without consideration of varna at all. So therefore, the varnas begin to disappear. So this, of course, depends upon varnas by birth and by marriage, etc., not determination. So this all becomes mixed up because of that, the breaking up of the family. So therefore, that whole system becomes also, the varnashram system itself becomes very difficult to implement, because the varnas are all mixed up. Nobody knows which varna is in anymore because of the mixtures. But that's, of course, by birth. So one solution to that, of course, is that rather than emphasis on birth, we emphasize the qualities. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says in Kali Yuga, the qualities of a person are more stronger standard for judging a person's varna than their birth, because we don't know what birth is, it could be mixed or whatever, bad education, etc. So we're simply determined by the quality of a grown person which varna he is. So therefore the system in Kali Yuga, the varnashram system itself becomes a little bit different if it is to be applied at all, because of the confusion of varnas, etc. By birth. Therefore it has to be determined by other methods like judging character, etc. So in any case, the marriage is very important, as we see here. And just as the Supreme Lord supports all living entities, being the ultimate creator, the maintainer of those bodies, so the father has to support the children. That's his responsibility in the family. So here we see that the basic purpose of the family is, or the marriage is, to produce children and raise families. That's the basic purpose of a family unit of people getting married. So it's not based on simply upon attraction itself, but upon responsibility. But we see here, Maharaj Dushmanta, he was attracted. So that was his basic impulse. Later on, he left. Then he was no longer attracted. So he wasn't so responsible. And he denied the son, he denied the wife. So he was not really ethical in his behavior. And he didn't follow the system of actually maintaining the child and the wife, etc. And he actually denied them and told a lie, actually. So not very good quality on his part to do so. So therefore there's a fault. So we see even among these great personalities, the fault's going to arise in consideration of marriage, etc. So no system is actually perfect, but emphasis upon some sort of marriage and some sort of permanent bond and a responsibility given to the father to maintain and protect the family. That's the main impetus of all the different types of marriage, whatever they are. And to somehow take advantage of the system, like the Gandharva system, you can easily take advantage of it because there's no formal thing, only acceptance. I accept you, finished. So therefore, you say, I didn't say that. There's no proof anywhere, and then you can deny it later on. So that's the weakness of that, the Gandharva marriage. The positive point is they like each other. The negative point is it's so informal that there's no proof later on. So here the proof came from this guy. This guy, the witness in this guy said, no, he's lying. He actually is married to her because he made this agreement previously. So they can be faulted in any system because the reason is people are faulty. They do have faults. They change their minds, etc. So we have no perfect system ultimately. But whatever system we accept, then we do have to strive to, on our own, become steady in character and at least fulfill the minimum requirements, as we see here, with supporting the family and wife and the children, etc. So that's the basic report here.
As it is in the first verse, this cheating propensity is one of the weaknesses of the human being. But the same thing can creep up for anybody anywhere. Even sometimes in spiritual life, we see that these sort of propensities come out. And we try to cheat ourselves rather than anybody else. How to overcome this?
Well, this is the process of anartha vritti. In the varnashram system, all the faults are considered sins, and we counteract the sins by punyas, etc., or atonements, or whatever like that, and by sense control. but of course people in the lower levels don't have much sense control, so it's more difficult for them. Nevertheless, everyone is at least taught the basic principles of right and wrong, proper conduct, etc. For devotees, of course, the rule is that the process of bhakti itself will destroy the bad qualities and material attraction and produce good qualities. So, in general, the bad qualities are all caused because of ignorance. First of all, we think that we are independent of the Lord, and then we attach ourselves to our material bodies for enjoyment. And we develop material desires and material hatred. So this is the cause of all of our bad qualities that we have in the material world. So that ignorance and the desires and all these propensities are destroyed by the process of bhakti. Because the action of bhakti is selfless. It is not for the self, it is for the Supreme Lord. So by its very nature, any act of bhakti will counteract the tendency to ignorance, selfishness, desires, hatred, etc. in the material world. So naturally that will happen. However, it may take time. It may happen gradually due to the imperfections in our bhakti. If we can do bhakti perfectly, it becomes very quick. If we do imperfectly, and we have aparads along the way, then it is slow. So this process we call the process of anartha-nivritti, the destruction of all the different anarthas. Anartha means something which is not considered very good, something we don't want, something which is useless. So in devotional service, this refers to all of these different things. The ignorance of our spiritual identity, the desires and hatreds that arise, the attachment to our material body, and the attachment to various objects in this material world, and the actions we do to get them. All of this is considered the anarthas. So all the bad habits and bad qualities will be classed among these different anarthas, and they're all destroyed by the process of bhakti. But if we don't do the bhakti perfectly, then it takes place gradually. If it doesn't take place at all, that means somehow we're not doing the system properly at all. So it should happen. There should be a gradual improvement in the qualities of manifestation. Good qualities are subhadha, and destruction of the bad qualities that should take place naturally through anartha-nivritti, which continues in nishtha, ruchi, asakti, and bhava. It goes all the way through there, it continues. So if one reaches the stage of nishtha, then technically his bad qualities should be under control for the most part. And maybe once in a while some bad quality will show up. So it's not such a problem. If he's before the nishtha stage, then they create more problems, these bad qualities. They will disturb his devotional service, and they can disturb the devotional service of other people. So with the nishtha stage, then the attachment to the Lord is more than the attachment to mine, and therefore the problems due to anarthas is less and less. It's under control. They can service, but then they're under control. So the process of bhakti should take care of the destruction of all these bad qualities, but it may take some time according to the efforts of the person, etc., and according to the quality of the bhakti and the willingness of apparatus.
Maharaj, given a situation, a boy who is practicing Krishna conscious for let's say 3-4 years, and he decided to become brahmachari. But before his decision, he also cultivated his parents, and probably they are started their devotional service. So at this point in time, sometimes somebody gives a guidance to the brahmachari that if you become brahmachari, then your parents may not be in bhakti. So it's better you get married and let them also do bhakti and you also do bhakti. Whereas the boy is actually aspiring to become brahmachari. So how this I mean, what should be the ideal decision for this boy to take at this
And what's the argument for the parents that if he becomes a brahmachari, then they won't be devotees?
Parents have started devotional service recently.
But then they won't be if he's a brahmachari.
Yeah. Maybe if he becomes brahmachari, probably there is a threat that, somebody guides the boy, that if you become brahmachari, probably your parents may not be in devotion. So it's better you get married, so the whole family do
Well, maybe
devotion.
it's best to convince them that it doesn't matter what happens as long as he's a devotee, it's better than anything. So that they can remain devotees, so they don't have to give up devotion if he becomes a brahmachari or whatever. It's just a misconception. In other words, devotional service is applicable to all varnas and all ashramas and people beyond the varna ashram system also. So it doesn't require that you have to be a certain ashrama to perform bhakti or whatever, and that your children also are in a certain ashram. Everybody is apartiyaka, unobstructed by any material conditions. So the parents should have that understanding.
నిరంతర